Discovered my wife's affair with our neighbor through her texts and concealed conversations, all while being coerced into silence for our children's sake. To go back to the beginning, I had just taken on a new project at work, a lot more responsibility than before, and suddenly my life was consumed by 60-plus-hour work weeks. The stress was eating at me, and I knew it was spilling into my home life. It was May 2015 when I first noticed something strange. My wife had suddenly added a password to her phone. When I asked her about it, she acted casual and told me she was planning my Father's Day present and didn't want me to ruin the surprise. About a week after that, she came to me, looking unusually guilty. Guilt had never been part of her vocabulary. She always insisted she never regretted anything in her life. But now, with this supposedly heavy conscience, she confessed that she was secretly having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my Father's Day present. It felt off. Something didn't add up, but at the time, I just pushed the thought aside. The password on her phone never went away. She became glued to that phone, and I caught her smiling at her screen more often than seemed normal, quickly hiding it every time I caught her. The secrecy gnawed at me. One morning, with my nerves on edge, I waited for her to get into the shower. I grabbed her phone before the password kicked in and looked through her messages. My heart raced when I saw she'd sent the neighbor a message. "I'm all covered in frosting, you wanna lick it off?" That was it. No other messages to him on her phone, but I found out later she'd set her phone to automatically delete texts after a certain amount of time. That left me feeling weird and deeply uncomfortable, but I convinced myself it was just her messed up sense of humor. I didn't want to believe she'd ever actually do anything to hurt me. As time went on, the neighbor was around our house more and more, yet the office project was crawling along at a snail's pace. My anxiety spiked. I couldn't help feeling that something wasn't right. I started tracking her location using Google Timeline, only to discover huge gaps in her GPS history. She was deliberately turning off her phone's GPS at certain times. It got to be too much. In July, paranoia took hold. I told her I needed to install new antivirus software on her phone. While she had it unlocked, I installed anti-theft software so I could remotely turn the GPS on, and set up AT&T message backup and restore so I could read her texts from my computer. I needed to know the truth. The next day my mom asked if she could spend time with our kids, so my wife dropped them off and had the entire day to herself. I could watch her every move from work. She spent the whole day desperately trying to meet up with the neighbor, only for him to be busy at another job site. That night, we picked up our kids and went out to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. My wife and his girlfriend were having a blast, drinking and laughing together. His girlfriend mentioned she wanted to see Magic Mike XXL, and I suggested they go together while I watched the kids. They accepted the offer, while the neighbor and I returned to my house so the kids could play video games. As the kids played in my son's room, the neighbor sat across from me on the couch. That's when my wife started texting him openly, describing intimate acts she wanted to share with him, and he responded enthusiastically. She told him to check his Snapchat, and at the exact same moment, I got the same snap, a video of her pleasuring herself in a bathroom stall. They kept planning how and when they could have sex, deciding on Monday morning after I went to work. My mind made up. I planned to pretend to leave for work on Monday and circle back to catch them. But then, right there in the open, I saw them exchange "I love yous," and it took every ounce of self-control not to leap off the couch and beat him senseless. I just sat and watched the whole sick conversation unfold on my computer. I saw her reply to his "You're my girl now" with "always have been," and him finishing it with "and always will be." When the women returned from the movie, I asked them nicely to come sit down. I got the kids to stay in my son's room with the door closed. Coming back to the living room, I confronted my wife and the neighbor. "So you two love each other, huh?" My wife instantly went into denial. The neighbor's girlfriend started hitting him. I pressed, asking my wife if she'd been texting him. She denied it, so I showed her the messages. She admitted to it, but claimed it was the first time things had gone that far. I asked if she'd sent him pictures. She said no, until I produced the picture, and then she said that was also the first time. When I asked if she was sleeping with him, she said no. I had no proof otherwise, because I hadn't caught them in the act. That one, she left unresolved. "I'm leaving you," I told her, and in response, she threatened me, telling me she'd make sure I'd never see my kids again. She planned to use the fact that I'd attempted suicide in high school against me, to prove I was unfit to be a father. She blamed me for being so consumed by work and said all she wanted was someone to talk to. Then she gave me an ultimatum: decide what I was going to do, or she'd decide for me. The neighbor's girlfriend started defending them both, saying that if they weren't having sex, it couldn't have been serious, and insisted that my wife and I were too perfect together to let this destroy us. After the neighbors left, my wife and I argued for most of the night, getting nowhere. We went to bed in separate rooms. The issue hung over us through the whole weekend, argument after argument. Finally, we agreed to a temporary separation while we figured out what we wanted. I'd stay in the house and she'd take the kids to her mom's. Monday came. In the middle of a meeting with my bosses, I got a text from her saying she'd explain things to the kids, but they were upset and that I should talk to them too. I came home to find my children in tears. She'd told them that mommy had to move out because dad was mad at her. When my son said he wanted to stay with me, she told him he couldn't. He figured that if she was moving out because I was mad at her, and he had to go too, then I must have been mad at him as well. My daughter just cried because her brother was crying. She was too young to understand. That was the moment I realized how vicious this could get. She was willing to drag our kids through hell to get back at me. I swallowed my pain and begged her to stay. She agreed, under one condition. I had to apologize to the neighbor, because our sons were friends and we'd still be seeing each other. I hated every second of it, but I did as she asked. We still see them every now and then. They come to birthday and holiday parties at our house. For my children's sake, I remain civil. Even after everything calms down, I can't stop thinking about it. The worry and suspicion remain, constantly gnawing at me. Ever since the day everything came crashing down, I've been trapped in a maze of my own thoughts, unable to find the exit. I can't shut my brain off. There's this relentless part of my mind, always humming in the background, analyzing, picking apart each memory and fear like it's my job, only now, it doesn't help me solve programming problems. No, it's become obsessed with what happened between her and him, replaying every detail, every choice I made, over and over. It started almost a year ago, just around Father's Day. I found out she cheated. She sent him pictures again, claiming it was a mistake, that she meant to send them to me instead. I tried to believe her, but deep down, I never truly could. Still, I convinced myself to move on. I begged her to stay. What other choice did I have, with children between us and so much life entangled together? Since then, things have been strangely quiet on that front, not a word or a whisper for about 4 months, but the silence doesn't help. If anything, it makes everything louder inside my head. I can't stop thinking, did I do the right thing? Should I have fought harder for myself, for my dignity, instead of for the illusion of keeping things together? Sleep has become a lost luxury. Most nights, I just lie there, staring at the ceiling. My job performance has taken a nosedive. I used to be sharp, able to tackle any puzzle or problem that landed on my desk, but now that part of me is rusted over. All I can think about is her, him, and the crushing weight that maybe, after all this, wanting a divorce would lead her to become even more vindictive toward my children and me. The fear roots me in place. I worry I've dug myself so deep into this mess, there's no way out. I haven't talked to anyone about it. My mom? She and my wife barely get along as it is. If she knew about this, the fallout would be nuclear, and I couldn't risk my children getting caught in that crossfire. I tried reaching out to a friend, once, but his advice was just to put my trust in God. That fell flat. I'm an atheist, and there's no comfort for me in that direction. So each day, I gather my pieces and try to function. But inside, I'm lost and completely uncertain what to do next, how to move on, or even if I ever can. Update 1. No one could have ever foreseen the tragedy that unfolded after I made the decision to file for divorce. I never imagined that a step intended to bring peace and a fresh start would lead to events so harrowing and irreversible. The days before it happened, tension hung over everything like an unspoken threat. Every small exchange felt loaded, every silence heavy. I had tried to do the right thing, protect myself, find a safer and better future, reclaim a sense of normalcy. As I filled out the paperwork, I kept telling myself that this was necessary, that the brief surge of fear and uncertainty was so much better than a lifetime of walking on eggshells. I leaned on my friends and family for support, and they stood by me, told me I was strong, that I could do this and I wasn't alone. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next, nothing. One moment it felt like I was finally moving forward, and then in a flash, that hope was shattered by violence I would never have expected. The details are everywhere now, but the reality of them is still settling inside me like a weight that won't move. That night, there was chaos, sirens, flashing lights, neighbors gathered outside in the dark, whispering and afraid. I remember the feeling of unreality, as if the world had slid off its axis. Now I think about how fragile everything is, how a decision made with courage can sometimes draw forth consequences no one could predict. I keep going over everything, wondering if there was a sign, a detail I missed. I want to believe there was some way this could have been stopped, that there is sense in tragedy. But all that's left are echoes, the choices I made, the violence that came sharp and sudden, and the lives changed forever because of it. In the aftermath, all I can do is hold on for those who are still here, and hope that, somehow, this pain makes way for healing. Update 2. If anyone out there has experience with GoFundMe, I could really use some advice. My former mother-in-law has actually set up a GoFundMe page using my last name and photos of my children, the same children her daughter murdered. She's using their images, my family's name, all to raise money for the woman who killed them. She says the funds are for her daughter's medical and legal expenses. I'm sick over this. I feel exposed and violated, not just because my children are being exploited to help their killer, but because it's my family name being used to gather support and funds from the community, possibly even strangers who don't know the real story. What can I do here? Is there a way to have GoFundMe take this down, especially since the campaign uses my last name and my children's photos without my permission? Anyone who knows the steps or has dealt with something horrifying like this before, I'd truly appreciate your help. Update 3. I suppose the first thing people might want to know is how I'm really doing. Honestly, I'd say I'm doing well, all things considered. I have bad days, of course, and I think that's to be expected after everything I've been through. What's become clear to me is the importance of leaning on my friends and family, and relying on the good coping skills I've picked up, so those bad days don't completely ruin me. I won't sugarcoat it, clawing my way back to where I am now wasn't easy. For a while, I was terrified to sleep, afraid of what I might wake up to, and plagued by nightmares replaying that awful night. For a time, I resorted to alcohol just to get some sleep. But my family cared enough about me to step in and take it away before it became something I couldn't escape from. Things got so dark that I ended up in the hospital, after the grief of missing my children made thoughts of ending my life impossible to shake. That experience taught me something vital: you should never, ever be ashamed of needing help with your mental health. Not seeking treatment only drags everything else down with you. Take it from me, if you or someone you love is struggling, seek help immediately. Don't throw your life away in a moment of despair, it is worth saving. Delaying help cost me dearly. I lost my job and became a total recluse. But I've made it back. I've been back at work since December, and I'm close to regaining my former position and salary. I'm finally steady again, so there's no need to worry, I'm standing on my own 2 feet. The next thing people tend to ask is how I feel about her sentencing. That's much harder to answer, because no sentence, no matter how severe, can ever bring my beloved children back. Do I think she deserved the death penalty, which is an option here in Indiana? No, I don't. She wanted to die, and after almost a decade of giving her whatever she wanted, I was determined not to hand anything else to her. As for whether her life sentence even means anything to her, I genuinely don't know. She always claimed she lived her life without regrets. Even after I caught her cheating, she'd say it, no regrets. My ex-in-laws, unfortunately, have been a constant problem. Not long after everything unfolded, they changed the locks on the house I was renting from them, with all my belongings still inside. I tried to get my things back through civil means, but I eventually had to involve law enforcement, and even now, that legal battle drags on. One family member even accused me of stealing property I had bought from them before the children died, trying to intimidate me into paying them double. I brought that situation to the authorities, and as far as I know, it's been settled. Visiting my children's grave has become difficult too, thanks to them. On the 1-year anniversary, they sat in their truck, watching me the entire time I was there. The feeling of being surveilled like that has kept me from visiting as often as I'd like. If there's anything I hope someone takes from my story, it is this: always make the time for the people you love. Don't take a single moment with them for granted. Update 4. The letter showed up in a plain white envelope with the Department of Correction return address and her name in blocky blue ink like a child trying to draw straight lines. I almost threw it away. I didn't open it for 2 days. When I finally did, it smelled like the paper had slept in a warehouse, dry and chemical. She wrote 3 pages without a single apology and then, almost as an afterthought, a sentence that has lived under my ribs ever since: it wasn't supposed to be them. No explanation. No names. Just that. I read it once, then again out loud, and then I put the letter in the freezer because it felt radioactive. It didn't bring answers. It made the questions sharper. I called the prosecutor's office and asked if I could listen to the recordings from the interviews. I didn't want details for the sake of pain. I needed to know if there was anything left to learn that could make the noise in my head make sense. The victim advocate sat with me in a small room with bad speakers. I listened to my own voice on the 911 call, thin and far away, and then to hers in the interview room, cool at first, then breaking, like glass. When they asked her why, she said, "Because if he leaves me, he still gets them." I think I stopped breathing. There was nothing sophisticated or cinematic about it. It wasn't insanity or a demon or some elaborate, hidden life. It was small and vicious. It fit too easily in a human mouth. That letter also dragged something else to the surface I'd been trying to ignore. Every time I drove to the cemetery and saw them sitting in that truck, I turned into a version of myself I didn't recognize, calculating the angle of my shoulders, counting steps from the gate to the headstone like a soldier crossing a field. I realized I had started to measure my grief around other people's behavior. So I filed a petition to move my children. The hearing was in a dim courtroom that always smells faintly of coffee. Her parents came, and they didn't look at me. The judge asked me why, and I told him the truth, that I couldn't be a father at a grave watched like a television. I told him I had a plot near my grandparents under a maple tree with a bench and shade. Her mother asked the judge to keep them where they were with their blood, and I felt my hands grip the edge of the table. The judge took a breath, said the law cares about next of kin and best interest, and gave me permission. They did it early, before the world was awake. The funeral director asked me if I wanted to be there, and I said yes. The morning the work was done, the grass was wet and the air was loud with birds. The machines were quieter than I expected. We placed them side by side under the maple. I'd picked a new stone with their nicknames, and inside the bench I had a line from the silly song I used to hum when they wouldn't sleep, carved small where only I know to look. I sat there a long time. No one watched me. I cried in a way that didn't feel like drowning. On the way home I stopped at the hardware store to buy sealant for the bench. I turned down the aisle with the sandpaper and almost collided with him. He looked older, smaller, like the light had retreated from his face. For a second we just stood there with a row of grit numbers between us like little talismans. He swallowed and tried to say my name. My mouth moved before I could think. Don't say it. He nodded and stared at the floor. He said he was sorry, quietly, like a person apologizing for being in someone's seat. He said, I didn't know, and then, I think about it every day. I believed him and I didn't. There's a way truth and cowardice can wear the same jacket. I told him I didn't care what he thinks about. I told him there are names he's not allowed to say. He started to cry and I walked away. My hands shook so hard in the parking lot I had to sit in my car until the shaking passed. The GoFundMe with my kids' faces is gone. It was taken down after I sent the death certificates and the court documents and a message that felt like it cost me blood. Her mother will probably try again and I will probably keep doing this dance until she gets tired or I do. The Locke's case is still sitting in a stack on some clerk's desk. There's always paperwork in grief. Last week I got another letter from the prison, a second envelope with the same blue ink. I didn't open it. I took it to the cemetery and sat on the bench under the maple. The sun came through the leaves in little shifting coins. I held the envelope over my knee until I couldn't stand the weight of it. Then I tore it in half and then half again, and let the pieces go. They fell like thick snow onto the grass. For once, I didn't think about what I was supposed to do next. I just sat there and let the air move around me, and for 3 minutes that felt like hours, I wasn't trying to solve anything. I was just their dad, under a tree, exactly where I needed to be. Update 5. The call came on a Tuesday that had been behaving itself. The victim advocate asked if I wanted a facilitated dialogue. They don't call it confrontation. They say it like you're meeting a colleague to clear a misunderstanding. I said yes because of the sentence in blue ink that wouldn't stop walking around my house. It wasn't supposed to be them. They don't just throw you in a room. There are rules and pre-meetings and 2 different people telling you that you can get up and leave at any time and no one will be offended. I sat in a small office that smelled like dry erase markers and coffee, and I practiced the only question I had. I brought the letter. I kept touching the crease until the paper felt like cloth. Prison has a sound. It's not the doors. It's the absence of outside noise. Even the fluorescent lights buzz like they're behind glass. They put us in a conference room with a plastic ficus and a clock that ran fast. She came in with her wrists unchained and her ankles whispering. She looked shorter. The khaki made her skin look like winter. For a second, my brain tried to remember the person I married and it couldn't find her. This was a stranger with my past stapled to her. She said my name like it was a sore tooth. I told her I wasn't there for her apology. I put the letter on the table between us like a bad photograph. The advocate sat a little off to the side with a legal pad that stayed blank. Who wasn't it supposed to be? I asked. Her mouth opened and closed once like she needed to swallow a word first. Me, she said finally. The room did that thing where the corners seemed to lean in. She said she meant to leave the kids with her mother, meant to take a bottle and a bath and let the water decide. She said she didn't know why she brought them home. She said she wasn't thinking. She said things happen like a slide you're on and you can't stop at the ladder and go back. I watched her lips shape it all and felt something sharp and small click into place. Not the truth. The mechanism of it. The way she moves air to make sounds that make a softer story. The same way she could smile at her phone and say it was frosting. There is a version of a person built entirely out of sentences that keep them from ever touching the thing they did. Or it was supposed to be me, I said, and her eyes moved the wrong way before she caught them. I didn't say the rest. I didn't say I'd listened to the audio of her telling detectives the reason in a voice like dishwater. I didn't say she had packed their backpacks and took them back early from her mother's and bought their favorite juice. I didn't say you don't plan an accident. She tried to say their names. I told her she doesn't get to use them anymore. She cried the way people cry when they can't quite find the tear lever. I sat there with my hands flat on my thighs and realized the question had been the trap. Not hers. Mine. There was no sentence that could make the floor not be the floor. The advocate's pen finally moved. I stood up before the clock reached noon. It was over. In the parking lot I put my forehead on the top of my steering wheel and my breath fogged the windshield from the inside like weather. A CO knocked on my window and asked if I was okay and I said yes because you can answer a question honestly and also be lying. 2 days later the Locke's case got scraped off whatever desk it was cemented to. A sheriff stood in a doorway while I walked through what used to be my in-law's rental, touching edges of things like checking for a pulse. They'd boxed my life into mislabeled cardboard that said Easter and Kitchen, pics on the side in black marker like a threat. I took the boxes with the kids' names and thanked the deputy for being a stranger in my house. At home I opened one after midnight and the top smelled like tempera paint and dust. There was a sock with a tiny hole in the heel and a construction paper sun with glue boogers on the edges and a tablet dead as a doornail. I found the charger in a different box under a rolling pin. When the screen came up it asked for a 4-digit code, and I knew it before I knew it. My son's birthday, his finger had typed it here once. The humid blue of the home screen slapped me. In the Videos app there was exactly one clip saved to the device, a 43-second story about a fort made of couch cushions where I am the cameraman. You can hear my laugh in it. I didn't recognize it. I watched my daughter come around the corner with a doll under her arm wearing a dish towel cape and I said her name and she ignored me because kids always ignore you when they're inventing worlds. At the end you can hear the silly tune I used to hum, the one I carved into the bench. It's off key and perfect. I backed up the file and then backed it up again and again like I was building walls around a seed. A week after the prison, a pale blue check arrived in my mailbox from the Department of Correction. The memo line said offender wages, restitution, and the amount was $18.47. There was a cartoon prison tower in the watermark. I held it up to the window and watched it become a ghost. I took it to the maple tree and told them what it was. I went to the nursery and spent it on a bag of sunflower seed and 2 flats of ground cover that will eventually knit themselves into the edges of the stone. I wanted the money to rot into something living that doesn't know where it came from. I still get letters I don't open, and calls I don't take. Her mother left a voicemail that started with how her voice used to sound when she read to the kids and ended with legal threats. I sent it to my attorney and then went for a walk between rows of houses that looked like they were made with a cookie cutter. A little boy fell off his scooter and skinned his knee and wailed like the world had ended, and his mother kissed the air above the cut and he stopped. That image followed me home and sat on my coffee table until dark. Last night, rain came in sheets so loud it turned the house into a drum. I took the tablet and the blanket from the back of the couch and lay on the floor and watched the fort video again and let the storm beat on the roof while their voices filled my living room. I fell asleep there and woke up with my cheek in a carpet wrinkle and my heart not sprinting. I didn't dream. I got up and made coffee and didn't spill any. I know that isn't news to anyone else, but it felt like a small unremarkable miracle to me. There isn't a door you walk through and suddenly you're on the other side of this. There's a tree. There's a bench. There's a locked room with a buzzing light you choose to enter once and then choose to leave. There's a check you can turn into birds. There's a laugh you recognize as yours after the 3rd time. There's the fact that I can say their names out loud in my kitchen without the floor inventing a hole. I don't know what that is called, exactly. It will do. Update 6. The house started making a new sound at night. Not the fridge throat clearing or the furnace sigh. A small ticking in the office wall, like a watch someone forgot to wind. I lay there and listened and realized it was my own breath bouncing back from a room that had no business existing. He built it with his hands. I'd been sleeping beside a monument to pretending. I called a place that leaves orange dumpsters like shipping containers on driveways. The guy who dropped it off had a tattoo of a wolf that looked more like a dog. He asked if I was doing a basement or a kitchen and I said an apology. He laughed and drove away. Drywall comes down like snow if you do it wrong and like paper if you've learned anything. I did it wrong for a while and then I learned. The first swing of the hammer shook something ancient loose in my chest. The wall opened with a hollow cough. Screws backed out of studs like little stubborn teeth. Under the paint you could still see pencil lines where he'd marked his level, faint as a bruise. I found a Lego in the cold air return and a blue crayon melted to a coin. I put both in my pocket. By noon the room was a ribcage and I could see sky through the bare window. Dust made the air look solid. I sneezed until my eyes watered and it felt like permission. I kept 2 boards. Not because they were special. Because they were ordinary and I could force them to be something else. In the evenings that week I planed them on sawhorses in the garage that still smells like tempera paint and gasoline. I sanded until the splinters stopped finding me. I cut angles badly and then better. I built a simple shelf that fits under the maple bench, shallow enough for flowers that don't tip and a place to slide the smooth rocks kids leave when they run out of words. It isn't beautiful. It is mine. When I screwed it into the bench I felt the old would answer like bones do when they found a joint that works. Property called in the middle of a Tuesday. Not the advocate. The man with the measured voice that belongs to boxes and ledgers. He said they were closing out sundries, his word, like we were talking about salt and batteries. I signed my name in a windowless room where all the chairs match and the computers don't. They handed me my life in clear bags with heat-welded seams and an inventory printed in a font that thinks it is invisible. The backpacks were lighter than I expected. The zippers hesitated like they were trying to remember the path. There were crayons in a sandwich bag, 3 with teeth marks, a pencil with no eraser, a pair of socks rolled into each other wrong, a note the teacher had clipped to a sheet that said good work. In purple and a star sticker half peeled at the point. In the side pocket of the smaller bag was a juice box so dented the straw had unglued itself from the plastic. I held it like it might bleed. In the parking lot I thought about throwing everything into the dumpster brain and letting it deal with memory like trash. I took it all home. I put the paper on the kitchen table and let it make piles. I sat with the juice box until the sun had moved far enough to take it out of my eyes. I stabbed the foil and poured it into a bowl by the sink. It smelled like apples that forgot themselves. I took the bowl to the maple and poured it at the roots and laughed once because the absurd has to come out somewhere or it turns on you. There was a ceremony at the school for the new playground equipment because there is a PTA and they accomplish things. I almost didn't go. Someone had taped 2 laminated photos to the fence with their names under them in a font that tries too hard to be handwriting. The principal read a paragraph. I tried to fuse myself to the ground. Their art teacher found me afterward with a folder that had my last name spelled right in the corner and a round water stain that made it look like it had cried. She said she kept some things back, in case. Inside there was a construction paper rocket with 3 triangles at the bottom that looked like teeth, and a sentence in big letters with the G backwards. When I grow up I want to be fast. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It was addressed to the future like it was a person who could take requests. I sat in my car with a folder open on the passenger seat and read that sentence until it lost its edges. Fast isn't a job. It's a prayer you say with your feet. Therapy looks like two little plastic pods that buzz in your hands and a woman who says, "Notice that," like she's pointing to a bird you've been sitting under your whole life. When the buzz travels left to right and back, my brain starts throwing up images I didn't RSVP. Not the bad sound. Not the tape. Mostly grout lines. The hole in my sock the day I opened the tablet. The smudge on the freezer door where my hand always hits. One memory came with new color. The way the sun hit the aquarium in the pediatrician's office lobby the day they got their shots and I promised ice cream and forgot and they didn't. I told the therapist about tearing down the office and she asked what it felt like in my body and I said like stepping off a curb you thought was a step and not falling. She wrote something down that was probably shorter than what I said. He put his house up for sale. A white sign with a red hat on it. A balloon tied to it one Saturday popped in the heat and I flinched hard enough to embarrass myself. A man with a tidy beard and a woman with a yellow purse went in and came back out shaking their heads because kitchens always give themselves away. I watched from behind the slats of my blinds like a cliche and then got mad at myself for being a person with blinds. On a different day his son rode a bicycle past and his shoelace was untied. I almost yelled, then didn't, then did. He stopped and tied it and didn't look up. There are tiny acts of mercy you do for ghosts that still have bodies. The Department of Corrections sent another form with another checkbox. Did I wish to be notified if she is transferred? Yes. Did I oppose her request to join a faith-based counseling program? I looked at that square for a long time. I don't want anything for her. I don't want to deny something and have that also be a kind of wanting. I left it blank. I mailed the envelope anyway because not answering feels like sleeping in a room with a window you haven't checked. I listed the house. The realtor's photos made it look brighter than it has ever been. I hid the boxes labeled kitchen, pics where no camera could see. On the morning of the first showing I swept up a small drift of drywall dust from a corner I missed and it came away in a single soft line like a mistake erased clean. A couple with a toddler came through and the kid made a fort out of the couch cushions while they discussed square footage and I stood in the hall and put my teeth into the soft part of my tongue until I could taste copper. The mother apologized and I said don't, like it was my fault too, which in a way it always is because I live where memories insist on happening. On the last evening before the handyman was due to patch the holes I'd left, I sat cross-legged on the plywood floor where the office had been and pressed my palms flat. The dog from next door barked at nothing and then at something and then gave up. Through the paper of the wall I could hear the faint wet radio of a neighbor's shower. The house felt lighter, like someone had opened a secret vent. I took the blue crayon out of my pocket and drew a rectangle low on the stud where the shelf had been, a doorway exactly wide enough for two small people to pass through shoulder to shoulder. It will be inside the wall again by the time you read this. It doesn't matter. I know it's there. I hung the shelf under the maple and slid the first rock in place on the left. It's one we brought home from a lake that summer that never finished becoming a memory because memory implies an end. A wren landed on the bench arm and scolded me for being alive in its space. I apologized out loud to a bird and felt ridiculous and then corrected, not sorry for being here. Sorry for the noise. This morning I made coffee and it didn't slosh over the rim even when the cat tried to trip me on purpose. I opened the folder with the rocket and said the backwards G name out loud in my kitchen. The floor held. I put the Lego on the sill where the sun hits at 9 and it glowed like something that has earned its color. There is no moral to any of this. There is with it used to be a lie now holding flowers. There is a line on a piece of paper that says fast and means more than my mouth can carry without spilling. There is a blinking cursor at the end of this sentence that will be replaced, eventually, by sleep.